On today's show, it is part 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking all things Jalen Johnson, and it's coming to you right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1821 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday here in mid-October, and today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. Begin the season with a big return at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to tell you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe anywhere you find your podcasts from the audio platforms like Audio and Spotify, Apple and Spotify, and we're also on YouTube. When it comes to video, please like the video as you're watching this and subscribe on that platform. We're back here with part 2 of 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking about Jalen Johnson. Stop right here. Part 1 is available in the same podcast feed right now, and I would recommend strongly starting with part 1 of this conversation, plus all the previous episodes of the Player Capsule series on the rest of the roster. Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter, the list goes on and on. Those will all be there in the archive for you as well. But part 1 is available right now for you. So part 2 is coming to you. Here we go with myself and Glenn. And by the way, just as a PSA here, TBD on the logistics of Wednesday's show. I am traveling Wednesday. It was not supposed to be a game day for the Hawks. Of course, that was a postponement. I have some travel. So not sure what the podcast is going to be looking like logistically after the game on Wednesday, but please stay tuned. The best way to find the podcast always is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. So stay tuned for that. All right, no more delays now. Back into the conversation with myself and Glenn on Jalen Johnson. We leaned into it a little bit earlier, but I want to talk about some defense, and I want to start with the rebounding because you mentioned the rebounding. We've always said, and I know you have, like, Jalen's a really good rebounder, and I'm not sure we've emphasized it enough based on what I was able to gather from my prep for this podcast. Because, it's a lot of it's talking about fit with Okongwu in particular, about how much he really helps that, because Onyeka's not a great rebounder, all these things that we've talked about for years. But I would describe Jalen as, like, legitimately excellent as a defensive rebounder at the 4. And it's funny because there are still Hawks fans, and I'm not picking on you. It's not crazy that think of him more as a 3 long-term even. Like, he's not the bruising, like, Sadiq Bey power lifter body type. So, like, he kind of looks like a 3 sometimes, but he's been a 4 basically his entire professional career to this point. But he's at a 25% defensive rebound rate in back-to-back seasons. For reference, last year, he finished the season 20th in the NBA in defensive rebound rate among qualified players. 20th. That includes centers. That's not 20th among power forwards or forwards. That includes centers. So, like, think about the best rebounders in the league. They're pretty much all centers. That includes all those guys. Clint was ahead of him, for instance. Drummond, Sabonis, whoever you want to say it, Jokic, all these guys, right? Jalen was 20th in the league in defensive rebound rate last year. And that's playing, by the way, half of his minutes with Clint Capella. And Clint is a fantastic elite rebounder still. For anybody who think we want to think about Clint, the one thing that we could tell you with great confidence, he's a great rebounder, right? So it's not like Jalen was only doing that with Clint when Clint was on the bench and he was soaking up all the extra rebounds. So long preface there. We knew he was good at that. I knew he was good at that. He was excellent at that. And if it's Jalen and Clint together, I pulled this too, they would have been like a number 2 or 3 in the league level defensive rebounding team last year, despite being as small as they were everywhere else. Like playing a bunch of 3-guard lineups and Quinn protesting about how small they were all year long. When they played Jalen and Clint, it didn't matter who else they were playing with, they rebounded. So rebounding is not all about defensive rebounding. Is they cross over. It's often a thing that people kind of forget about with rebounding. But with defense, I should say, but you have to close possessions, and Jalen to start there on defensive end is, I hesitate to use the word elite. I think he might just be elite as a rebounder. Like he's that good. It seems like.
I think that's fair, and I think his feel is there, and he's just faster than you, and he just jumps more quickly than you. He gets off the floor more quickly than you. He has great hands.
Yep. High points the ball. Yep.
And he converts the rebound into transition. Really, really well for a power forward too. right?
Mhm.
And so it's not just the rebound, stop, find, trade. He's capable of going, and you're in the arena sometimes. You can hear on TV sometimes, but like you can hear Trey saying, "Go, Jalen, go."
Yep.
There are times you hear that, and they want to lean into that. I mean, the one thing that might offset his rebounding a little bit is if they want Dyson and Ricochet and guys like that to rebound and let Jason leak out, just let Jalen leak out. Because like good luck, if
Yeah.
he's able to leak out. So there are some things you can do strategically depending upon what lineup is on the floor to let Jalen leak out, right? If Okongwu was on the floor, Okongwu probably needs his help rebounding. Where if Clint's on the floor, Clint maybe doesn't need his help rebounding, and you'll let him leak out some. But that's because Dyson's such a good rebounder for a guard. Ricochet is already demonstrating the ability, like even if he doesn't get the rebound, he notices when his big man is under the rim and he comes and gets a little tap out, to someone else to rebound the basketball. And so they have their secondary rebounding is already looking much, much better here in these two preseason games.
Mhm.
But I mean, when
They're
you're
big. They're bigger now, man. Like I don't mean to derail this conversation, but like this is one of the reasons why Quinn and Landry were like, guys, we're too small, is that they're so much bigger. It's like, especially being there in person. I don't mean to pull the in person card, but just being like, they're just so much bigger across the board. Like
totally different.
they're suddenly big on the wing, not even just like average. They're big on the wing now compared to being small before.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so it's just gonna be interesting to see how they rebound as a team, which Quinn talks about like nonstop. It's like Quinn will get
Mhm.
it. But he,
It
I
is
mean,
it is a group thing on the
yeah,
glass. Even when you have Clint, it is still a group activity.
yeah. But the other piece is that if you're up 8 to 10 points with 3.5 minutes left, it might be Clint and Jalen just like we're rebounding and we're gonna hold the ball, we're gonna work
Mhm.
the clock, we're not gonna look to leak out in situations like that. And that's and it'll be. I mean, to me, it's gonna be fascinating to see how Quinn decides who closes the center across the season because he has three viable alternatives that have different things to offer. That's a
Yep.
different podcast probably. But
Definitely.
but no, I mean, I think he brings so much in that phase of the game that if they're playing from behind, they can go a little smaller. They can get a little
Mhm.
bit more shooting on the floor. They can get a little bit more ball handling on the floor. And I think sometimes fans don't realize like down 6 or 8 points with 5 minutes to go, when you have a guy who can rebound way above the baseline for his position, you give yourself some opportunities to swing towards more offense on the floor, for example, when you're playing from behind. And that's a great thing that Jalen offers his team.
One more stat. We'll move on from rebounding. I just looked this back to make sure I wasn't crazy. Uh, there was only one player ahead of Jalen in the NBA last year in defensive rebound rate that I would say is not a center, and that player is Giannis. And Giannis is and Giannis is a freak. We all understand that. So like, if he's the only guy, it's not a center ahead of him on the list.
Yeah.
You could say, I mean, the only other guy that like may not be a center is Evan Mobley, but Evan Mobley is a center playing power forward.
Yeah.
Basically, we all
Yeah,
understand
and
that.
Giannis plays a decent amount of center.
And yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Of the
Yeah,
guys, I mean, Jalen's the only guy on the list that doesn't really play any center. Like maybe he'll
yeah.
play.
He
He
maybe played
might
60
just to
minutes
say
last
this.
year, maybe.
Yeah, just to
Yeah,
say this. If the Hawks had an injury or two, or a trade or two at center, I could see them playing 4 minutes a game with Jalen at center at some point this year. They don't want to do that, but people, I know you and I have gone this well many times. Jalen played more center at College Park than he did anything else
yeah,
that season
yeah.
as a rookie. So like, I know that people always want him to play the three, and I get that he can do that. I'm not saying he can't because he can do that, but I think he's still four, and uh, that is one reason why it's very workable is that he just grabs rebounds, and like you said, that can really help offensively. We talked about his offense already, but that really helps, especially when he's one of those guys in the league. How many guys are there that are as good as Jalen, even much less better in the get a rebound and grab and go and push by yourself?
Yeah.
Like he's a end to end terror, and like I don't like to use LeBron or Giannis as comparisons, but like if you took those guys away, how many guys are as good as Jalen at that? There are not very many.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny to think back that first year in College Park when the G League team was running a completely different set of schemes and the Hawks were.
Yeah,
And I know that
the
was for
Nate
development. I know that was for
the Nate
development.
era.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
there was not a comprehensive plan in the way that there is now. So
I'm gonna say a few words and then we'll move on. And the quote was, "We're not doing development." That was
yeah,
the quote from the head coach. at that time. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and basketball and football are now both here at the same time. You can begin the season with a big return at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and now you can find a lot of information from the latest stats to live play-by-play and much more on the same page where you're placing your bets at FanDuel Sportsbook. You also begin with a great offer at FanDuel. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. You should also know that the FanDuel Sportsbook app is really easy to use as well. They have the entire stuff covered for you across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads. They have money lines and player props, live betting, same-game parlays, future bets, and so much more. The app is safe and is secure at FanDuel Sportsbook, and they cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes the NBA as the headliner of this podcast, plus WNBA, NFL, college football, MLB, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And all of that is fantastic. It's all there in one place at FanDuel, and it's a great time. Sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. One more time here, visit FanDuel.com and get started right now with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. The place to go is FanDuel.com to check out America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, other than rebounding, a couple things to note on his defense, and I want to ask you some questions too. His foul rate went way down last year, which is good. I was a little worried about it in his first full season, his second season in the league. He averaged like 5+ fouls per 100 possessions. That was a lot for a power forward. Last year's 3.4. That's totally fine. He kind of figured out what he can and can't do a little bit more last year, in my opinion, and that's also shown up by the stats. And he still creates steals and blocks. His block rate went down a little bit last year. I think because he wasn't just wildly swinging every block, which means he wasn't fouling as much. There's some correlation there between block rate and foul rate sometimes. But other than that, like, what do you think of him as a defender right now and how they use him? Because there's been talk about like his screen navigation. I know you and I talked about it a lot, especially during last season, like where he kind of wasn't yet as a on-ball defender when they tried that. Now they don't have to use him that way as much, but he did guard Tyrese Maxey a decent amount last night. I was kind of surprised by that, but he did. And then also that's the on-ball piece. So there's that. And also, how's the softball defense? What do you think of him as, like, you know, attentive, rotations? Like, obviously you're on the podcast, Glenn. We have to talk about him doing the little things that we love to talk about. So where is he defensively at this point in time heading into year 4?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because if you kind of read between the words of things that Quinn said about his defense last year, Quinn was very professional about it, but you could tell he was, to me, right? I don't want to put words in Quinn's mouth. To me, it was like, we want more.
Yeah,
right.
That's fair.
He can do more, right? And a lot of that is, and Quinn will talk about situational awareness now and then. I don't know if he used that exact phrase, but that's kind of the tone of what it felt like he was kind of getting to. And again, I look back at last year, I'm like, that was the first year Jalen played starter minutes ever, right? Mm-hmm. in his NBA career. And so I want to give him a little grace, you know, for some of the things he wasn't doing as well. But he's capable. I mean, if you just think about his athletic capability, he's capable of doing more. He's capable of giving them more. It's been interesting. You know, Kevin, after the Philadelphia game, put a nice little clip out where Dyson was helping Jalen get organized and get the timing on when to get to the lower circle in the middle of the paint, things like that. And I think that's going to help him. I also think Hunter does a lot of the stuff you want Jalen to pick up on. I don't think you want to go out of your way to like drive Hunter's minutes up beyond what they should be to kind of let Jalen get that. But Hunter does a lot of things they want Jalen to do. Hunter does that stuff, right? I can hear people screaming at me right now about the things that Hunter does that frustrates everyone.
And that's fine. Yep.
That's totally fine. But there is something he can learn around the way that Hunter organizes, the way that Hunter communicates, the way that Hunter connects, and things like that. That said, Jalen should play whatever number of minutes a game more than Hunter this year. 8, 10. Well, I don't know what that number is, right? I don't know what the number is. I don't want to speculate on it, but it should be a real number.
Even you and I've been kind of leaning into the not like full on defensive DeAndre Hunter, but I think a lot of it's gone a little bit too far the last week or so. And even I think and obviously you had appreciation for him too. We understand that DeAndre Hunter is not nearly the importance of a piece that Jalen is this season and beyond. Yeah, they're just to say that out loud.
They're a few tiers apart from each other.
Yeah.
And DeAndre's role is going to be different this year, for sure. I fully expect that to be different this year. But I mean, and as an example, It's something I would encourage fans to think about. Like block shots are a sexy stat to a lot of people, right? But they're overrated in a way. I think if you talk to an NBA coach or a really experienced player, they would say what's better than a block shot is not even let your defender get to the shot attempt, right? Getting them stuck 14 feet from the basket with and can't get past you. Shot clock is dwindling down. Like that's better than a blocked shot, right? Chasing blocks oftentimes is what will drive up your foul rate, you know. And so for me, I think the stuff that I appreciate that Jalen did last year on ball last year, like they were, I mean, we remember he defended Kevin Durant for like 25 minutes, and when it felt, I mean, I don't know if that was the actual number, but that Nets game, they were like, you got KD, or that Suns game, I don't remember which part of the season was 2 years ago, I think Brooklyn, and last year the Suns, you got KD. They trusted him on DeMar DeRozan. And the Bull when Zach LaVine was not playing, the Bulls rode DeMar DeRozan. And so those are examples of like guys who want to play a little bit closer to the basket, play below the elbow, play down in that space, and see him do well kind of in those areas. But for me, I want to see him learn how to just recognize, oh, you're trying to do this. I'm not going to let that happen. And I have the physical capability to decide I'm not going to let you do this thing that you're trying to do. That's better than a block shot, right? So on ball, that's where I want to see his growth. Off the ball, yeah, when he's low man, absolutely get to the rim, absolutely deter stuff, be on time. And I love watching Dyson get like earlier Jalen, you know.
Yeah.
So right. And that's I think that's gonna help him. I mean, Dyson is gonna be so helpful for some of these guys that because the Hawks have been so challenged defensively the last few years, and it was almost a like should we even try? Like, should I even get invested? You know, that kind of thing. And Dyson's like, we're playing defense.
We're figuring it out now. No, it's interesting with Jalen because I don't want it to seem like we're pouring cold water, but even during last season, like we were intentional. I know I was on the show. I know you were on this podcast and your podcast. Like, I think Jalen was worse defensively last year than people understood that he was, generally speaking.
Yep.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that he was functionally a second year player in some ways. He made young guy mistakes. There were flashes too. Like when you are 6'9" with that kind of burst that he has, like the flashes are really, really good. And that's people remember that stuff.
Chase down blocks, things like that, right? So.
Especially for a guy that people obviously are invested in already, they're going to remember the good stuff more, which is good. But I think the down to down, play to play was not that impressive defensively from Jalen last year, and that's okay to say out loud. I still believe that it's going to get better. The tools are great there. This is an important year for that. And in his defense, like I said with a lot of different guys, the infrastructure getting better around you is generally going to raise your own level. And I think that's the Hawks are hoping that will be the case for everybody this year. Not just bringing in Dyson. He's the headliner because he's the most ready-made game changer defensively, but the size, eliminating some weaknesses, just getting bigger, all these things.
Stuff Ricochet is already showing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Right? I mean, he's doing stuff
like,
that's
and beat too. And so I mean, it's kind of funny last year because it's one of those things like you're trying to grade and ball handlers are getting downhill at will all game long.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you do? You know,
right? So, and same with the bigs. Same conversation we had with the bigs all year long, all summer long. Like, yeah, they're not without their own issues, but it really became hard to evaluate the backline defenders at times last year because of how bad it was at the point of attack. So on Jalen, like role wise, I don't think he's going to be. How do I say this? I don't expect him to ever be this like screen navigating terror on the perimeter. Like I don't think he's ever going to be like this great one-on-one perimeter defender. He'll be able to flash that. Like I said, he did guard Maxey last night. I think that was kind of out of necessity given the lineup that we're playing. They were playing it with like I can't remember what it was. It was a funny lineup. It was like Trey, Bogey, maybe Ricochet and Jalen playing together. And it's like I guess right now Jalen's their best perimeter defender of this group because Ricochet is still a rookie. Maybe not, but
they let him do it for a little while, then they switched Bogey onto it and gave Bogey kind of a
chance
to do it, you know. So
that's kind of says it all. But anyway, I look forward to Jalen getting better at the little things that maybe only sickos will notice regularly. But I feel like that's a natural progression. Hopefully, in a year, we're not saying he didn't get better because that's possible that he just kind of stagnates and he wasn't bad. I don't want to say that either. Like he was not a bad defender last year. He wasn't, but he wasn't the positive that I think he probably should be. And I think I'm glad you framed that way because Quinn didn't ever say it that plainly, but the feeling around the team I don't often go to the source route, but like stuff I heard from people that were close to the team, they're like, hey, we understand like Jalen's gonna be better defensively. And it wasn't just Jalen. They all understood it was not just Jalen. We're not saying it was just Jalen. This is a Jalen conversation. He should be part of the solution, I think, moving forward. He may not be the number one part of the solution. I would probably lean with Dyson on that if you picked one guy this year coming into the season. But I think Jalen will be better, and that just comes with reps and all those things that he's still really young, man. He's 22 years old, so he'll get better there. I'm confident in that. Today's show is brought to you by Hims. And things are important in life, but your schedule is also busy. Maybe you don't have time to go to a doctor's office to be treated for ED directly through Hims. You can get a personalized and convenient ED treatment without stepping foot outside of your own door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your own couch. Hims also provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, as well as Viagra and Cialis and their generics to up to 95% cheaper than they be available elsewhere. The process is 100% online, so there's no need to actually be uncomfortable with doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. If prescribed, your medication will ship directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can also help you find the ED option that works best for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That is HIMS, Hims, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. One more time, that's hims.com/lockedon. Products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See websites for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan.
I think him having to be a lot less frequently in a position to have to rescue a play, to have to like catch a wing, like, 6'7" wing, or say Donovan Mitchell coming like, full speed, right? I mean, Rudy Gobert can't do anything with that. He just, I'm saying, I'm using an exaggerated kind of example there.
Yeah.
But I do think more impact is what I do think he can make more of an impact this year with the natural skill that he has. And to have him on the court with more capable defenders is going to give him a chance to feel like he can pick his spots to kind of make plays and be a defensive playmaker. Yeah. And I think that's very different from where it was last year, where he was just like, oh, great, I got James Harden coming right at me, right through the nail, So
he does, like, one of the reasons I led beyond the rebounding with the block rate and steal rate is that those are usually good indicators. Like, I tend to agree with you. Like, it can be overrated sometimes. Like, it's not just about havoc creation, but it does kind of tell you when you have tools sometimes to make plays. And he is, I think he's going to lean to be playmaking. I think he could be an off-ball terror defensively if things come together. We're not there yet, but that could happen in the near future.
Yeah. And obviously the same thing. I don't want guys Jalen size working over screens every game. Like,
and that's why I brought that up. Like, they don't either. I don't think that you're going to see him. And one more time,
that's cost Hunter a lot of games.
I will try not to do this again beyond this one mention. Having more guys who can navigate a screen on the perimeter, a la Dyson, a la V, even Kobe, even Ricochet, should make it to where Hunter and Jalen don't have to do that nearly as much. And Hunter, injury issues have been Hunter, but Hunter is not the same. If you watch him play to play, not the same athlete he used to be. And it's just what it is. So Jalen, I'm not worried about the athleticism part of it, but you don't want him to have to do that just for like workload reasons. He had the ankle stuff last year. I'm not worried about the ankle stuff. He's wearing an ankle brace this year. It'll be fine, but you don't want the wear and tear if you don't have to have it, and he shouldn't be probably doing that.
Kawhi Leonard would have had a completely different career if he weren't, like, in his first 4 years in the league, like, chasing over 80 screens a game.
It's hard work, and you can argue I would probably argue, this is a sidebar, like, Kawhi maybe doesn't become Kawhi without that. Like, he kind of had to make his name doing that first. People have kind of forgotten that he was not the offensive player until much later. But you're right. You're right, though, that the wear and tear on that, especially for guys who are forward size, like Jalen is. Jalen is big forward size too. It's not like, he's taller than Hunter is. Like, it's hard to, like, you got to wiggle under screens, and like, it's not the easiest thing to do. logistically. Glenn, we don't often do this, but I feel like I have to for 5 minutes anyway. The extension, right? So one thing I'll just say here at the top, top of this mini segment is the deadline for Jalen to sign an extension. If the two sides find one, is Monday, this coming Monday, 6 Eastern time. As we're recording this podcast, it's Tuesday night into Wednesday, no deal yet. And as I am fond of saying, the lion's share of these deals happen in the last day, basically. Deadline spur action is the quote, of course. I can't remember who says that. It's true though. But I'm not asking you to give your take on whether it's going to happen or not, because it's not your beat. I understand that. But the Hawks are going to keep Jalen Johnson long term. If they don't sign a new extension, they're going to match any offer next summer if they have to. Don't worry about it if you're a Hawks fan. I get it. It's a big topic. I won't say it's not, because it definitely is. But through that lens, I wanted to bring it up and just say one more thing on this, because it's a Jalen show. I believe, from what I have heard, if a deal gets done, it's going to begin with a 3, meaning 30 plus million in average annual value.
Yep.
If it gets done. I don't think Jalen's side, and Jalen is represented by Clutch, who no longer has Trey, by the way, notably. Trey left Clutch, but LeBron and company, etc. I don't believe they're going to take a deal, a big discount on Jalen Johnson. That's what I would say. All that to say, like, I've joked like about him being number 1 on the call sheet this summer in some ways. He's not better than Trey right now. He's not. But I think organizational priority wise, he might be ahead of Trey as far as like how they approach things this summer. He was the one guy who was untouchable in trade discussions. That was widely reported by others, but I can confirm that too. I heard the same thing. And it's not, again, they understand he's not better than Trey. It's a different discussion. They are committed to Jalen long term. They see the star upside, all that stuff. So we'll look forward a little bit here at the end of this, Glenn. A year from now.
What's the max he could sign? Do you have that in front of you?
I mean, it's the 25% max, so
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get that. I'd be shocked if he did, because the Hawks have my philosophy on this. I know you know this too, but for listeners, unless you're a no-brainer max, there's no reason to give a guy a max a year ahead of time, because the only thing that can happen there if you're the team side is bad. Like for me, you need to have a reason, and by reason I mean like a discount of some kind, a give back on the player side to give an extension.
Yeah.
Trey got his a year early, no brainer, because Trey already made the All-Star team. Like, he was a proven max player already.
Yeah, I think the thing that Hawks fans, and this is a little bit unfair for me asking about this player, but like,
No, it's fine.
is Jalen better than Franz Wagner?
I think if you polled the league, people would say no. But, and I think I'd probably agree, I think Franz is more proven. That's a different discussion. Like, I think Franz is more proven. I think Jalen has a higher upside than Franz.
Yeah. I'm not asking for my own standpoint. I think Hawks fans look at that and go, why not give Jalen that? Like, Franz got it. Like, why would Jalen not get it? You know?
Well, and by the way, if you're and that's one of the reasons why I said what I said earlier. I can almost guarantee you, I haven't been in these rooms listening to this, I would be shocked if Jalen's agent did not bring up Franz.
Yeah.
Because people have, including me, have brought up, last year was, it was McDaniels and it was Devin Vassell, and like they got paid a lot of money. Devin Vassell got $30+ million, right?
Yeah.
Without, in my mind, proving as much as Jalen has already proven.
Right.
Now, granted,
yeah.
So that's kind of the low end bar if I'm Clutch to say, look, don't offer me less than this. Like, it's insulting if you offer me less than what Devin Vassell got. But yeah, why? I'm sure that Clutch went to the table and said, okay, side by side, Franz Wagner, Jalen Johnson.
Yeah.
Even if Clutch says, okay, we'll buy that you think that Franz is 10% ahead of Jalen or whatever. Yeah. Okay, he got the max a year early, so why not? And I get that. If you're the player side, by the way, you should ask for the moon. Jalen should be asking for the moon right now. There's no reason not to do that. Yeah. And it's just, if you're the team side, my philosophy, and I actually don't know what Landry thinks, is he would never reveal this to me as candidly as I'm going to say it, but I just wouldn't give the max to any, or really, I wouldn't pay what I think is market value to a player a year early. I want to get a discount, or I'm not going to do it. Because the thing is, and this is cold and calculating, but let's say Jalen has the greatest season of all time coming up. He breaks out. He makes the All-Star team. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but like, let's just sim to the end. He averages 24 points a game, All-Star team. He can't get more than the max
Right.
next summer.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're going to just pay him the max next summer, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a good quote unquote problem. So maybe you could get Jalen for 32 million a year or 35 million a year right now, and next year he costs you 44 million instead. Like, that's not great, but hey man, if he's a max player next summer, you're okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If he's worth that, you're sitting pretty. I mean, you're in a good spot, right? And that's, for me, it's like, I personally, like, I'm a little bit more skeptical about, Franz Wagner. I mean, I like him as a player, but he's
Agreed.
really lucky that Banchero's on that team, because now that situates him as a second, offensive player.
No, we 100% agree, and I'm a Michigan guy. I'll acknowledge that. I would not have given Franz a max a year early.
Yeah, same.
I
Yeah.
thought that was a mistake by Orlando, personally. Now,
Yeah.
even as much as I like Franz, and by the way, and if he repeated, and this is a rabbit hole, but if he repeated last season, would he have gotten the max on the market next year? Probably, but like, they took on all the risk and they didn't
It's
have
hard
to do
to
that.
know. I mean, and this is where I am, like, wishing, like, I would defer to an actual expert on the CBA, but it seems like the second apron is going to be a little bit more of a constraining factor for teams that
It
used
is.
to be like, Alan Crabb, come on down for a max contract.
Well, yeah, the middle. I
know?
mean, I actually talked to somebody about this offline the other day that is, I would say, an expert on this kind of stuff, much more than I am. And the consensus in the league is basically like the upper middle class is what's been squeezed a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, not the middle class, because they can get the mid-level exception and below. It's the guys that were like used to get like 15 to 20 million, like the good starter level.
Yeah.
It's like those guys may not have the landing spots that they used to have.
Caleb Martin.
Yeah, and honestly, that makes, I don't mean to do this to everybody, that makes the 100 contract look worse and feel worse.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of deal that's not going to happen anymore across the league, not just for the Hawks. Like,
that's why assuming they may want to trade him, that's why they can't trade him.
exactly.
Right?
And I'm not trying to be negative of that. That's the kind of contract that you're going to see less and less of, is those like fifth starter types getting paid 25 million a year. Like, that won't happen.
The old days. I mean, Tyler Johnson getting that crazy contract.
Right.
Happy
And
for
obviously Jalen's way
Porter,
Jalen's way ahead of that. Way ahead of that.
Way ahead of that. But like 10 years ago, it was nuts. You know. Sure. I mean, God. I mean, how I feel about Kent Bazemore, but man, good grief, man. Like that. Like, Caleb Martin can't get Kent Bazemore money.
No, Baze. I've always liked Baze. Baze timed his free agency as well as he possibly could have. He got 4 for 70 in a way that, congratulations to him on life-changing money. That probably should have never happened, and it's fine. But agreed. But no, I mean, on Jalen again, I know this is, again, not your beat, but it's a big topic this week. And also, it's more, I want to frame it as like, the Hawks if they don't extend him, it's not because the Hawks are not committed to Jalen.
Yeah.
I am reporting that to you right now. I think Hawks fans probably know that, but I'll just say it out loud. They are all in on Jalen.
Yeah.
They love Jalen. If they don't find a deal, it's not because they don't think he's going to be a great player long term. It's because they have a number and a collector has a number, and if they don't meet in the middle, they don't meet in the middle. It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're not a clear max player.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it happens.
Yeah.
Some organizations go in the mindset like, we just want to show the guy we have confidence in him.
Orlando this summer,
exactly,
with Franz Wagner. Exactly.
Other organizations are like, why rush through that right now? On Jalen's side, the big thing we all know about is like what happened to Sadiq last year, right?
Yeah.
Now Jalen's a different class of player than Sadiq, but it's just a guy heading towards restricted free agency, having an awful injury, and it cost.
No, and he lost a lot of money, and Sadiq had what I would say, from what I heard, was kind of unreasonable contract request. And by the way, when I say Sadiq, I mean his representation. I'm not mean to talk about Sadiq. They asked for too much and drew a hard line where I would not have. They were higher than I would have drawn it, from what I heard. But yeah, there is always risk, and that's the thing. Like, if you're a risk averse person, I totally get a Hawks fan being like, why would Jalen not take 5 for 170 or whatever it's going to be? And I understand why you would say that, because if you're risk averse, Jalen was the 20th pick in the draft. He's obviously made a lot of money in real life terms, but this is a new stratosphere of of earnings that he's going to reach if he signs an extension. Like
Yeah.
that's a guaranteed
Yeah.
payday, and I get that. And every player is different. It's
Yeah.
all. I mean, obviously your agent matters a lot, but at the end of the day, if the player says I would like to sign and make sure that my family is taken care of for the rest of my life, they can do that. The player can decide I'm going to sign it, and that
Yeah.
could happen.
Yeah, usually, oftentimes the trade-off is a little lower average annual contract value player option than the last year to get them back on the market if that's the
Yep.
line. A lot of teams meet and players will meet in the middle, kind of on those two kind of conceding points.
And you
But
can do 5-year extensions now too, which they couldn't do. Like
right.
a few years ago, you couldn't give a 5-year extension. You could only do 5 years if the guy got to free agency. Now you can do 5-year extensions even if they're not max. So like that's why I threw that number out there. If they gave him 5 for 180, let's say for Jalen is not a max contract,
Right.
but that's a 5-year deal, player option on the end or whatever. There's a sweetener there. Again, we don't have to go all these scenarios. I just wanted to, and normally I would never do this, but it's literally this week, so it's a big topic on a Jalen conversation.
It's a big deal. It's a big factor, and I think it's something that Hawks fans will watch. But I do think if you look around the league, that there are players that we'll just say a lot of people might think like are comparable to Jalen that are getting that full max.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is that Hawks fans that kind of scratch their head, I get it. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, for sure. And the only thing I would gently push back on to that viewpoint is that Jalen's only done it for 1 year. And I'm sure if you're the Hawks negotiating in that room with Jalen's agent, that's your number one thing. Is like, look, man, he did it once, and they love him. But if you're trying to negotiate the other way, that's the only thing you can knock on Jalen right now is that he's only done it 1 year. And if you're Jalen's agent, you would say, hey, whose fault is that? You didn't play my guy. So
that guy's not here anymore.
Correct. Yeah. So it's negotiations are funny. It's back and forth, and I don't think it's going to get acrimonious. I really don't. And if they don't get it done, I think it'll be whatever it is. Like, look, if I had to guess, if Jalen doesn't sign an extension and has the year that I think he might have this year, he might just get the max next summer.
Yep.
And
agreed.
We'll see.
It's hard to find guys, power forwards that can pass the ball, great hands. 99%, those guys are hard to find. So,
yeah, to wrap up on the whole conversation, and I'll let you go. Like, we're obviously quite high in them. You just these guys that have the skill set that Jalen has as a legitimate 6'8", 6'9" hyper athlete with two-way capability, enough shooting, enough playmaking. Like he's got everything you would want. Like, is he a perfect player? No. Like he has skills that you would want to see improve, but like he takes nothing off the table right now. He does everything's on the table with Jalen Johnson, and that really is exciting. I mean,
agreed.
Long term, you're hoping that he becomes a perennial all-star, and I'm not saying that's the median outcome, but that is a reasonable outcome. If you're the Hawks right now, and I mean, I'll ask you, and I'll kind of give my opinion too. Like, if you look up in 10 years and Jalen was a 4-time All-Star, would that surprise you? It wouldn't surprise me very much.
No. And again, like to kind of circle back to me, the big thing I'm watching this year, I want to watch patiently. Is he starting to integrate the athleticism with the skill, right? Because last year it always felt like you're watching a play, like he's either using the athleticism or he's using the skill. This year, does he start to, over time, week over week, start to integrate those different parts of his capabilities? Because that's what turns him into an all-star.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. The sky's the limit there. I'm excited to watch him. I know you are too. Hopefully Hawks fans are. I know they are. People, he's like one of the guys. It's funny. This is anecdotal, but there's discussion on like almost every player in some form or fashion, high or low right now. Like even Trey, people are lower on Trey than they used to be. Reese Shea is not to a point yet where he's universally bought in. There's people that still don't buy it, whatever it's going to be. I don't know. Are there Hawks fans that don't like Jalen? Because I don't know where they are if they exist. It feels like everybody's in, which is fine. That's the way it should be. I think you should be in. But it's like he's the one guy on the roster right now that seems to have 100% approval.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I would caution Hawks fans, like, it's going to be a different experience for him this year. So be patient with his first 20, 25 games. It's going to be different. Yep. I still think he's going to do plenty of good work, do plenty of good things, but it's going to be a different experience for him this year, and plenty of time to work through seeing different things, experiencing different treatment by opposing defenses, and that takes time to work through. And I think he'll come through it just fine, but it takes a little time.
Yeah, we agree wholeheartedly on that. Glenn, thank you again for giving me yet another hour of your life. and fighting through technical difficulties. And people will never know what we were dealing with earlier today. But thank you for your flexibility. Anything to plug on the way out? And I promise you, I will give you a break. I want to ask you to come on the podcast for at least like 2 days. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like I don't know. 3 weeks into the season, we'll probably stop and like, okay, well, what are they doing different? How's it going?
Yeah, that's that.
That kind of thing. So
open invite always. I know how much time you have given me, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, ATL 29 podcast at Willis Centers for Glen on Twitter or X, whatever you're calling it. And I did some breakdowns on both preseason games already. So if you haven't seen that, feel free to go look a little bit of that. And that'll be a pretty normal thing throughout the season, depending upon day job tolerance and timing and all that sort of stuff. But I enjoy talking with Hawks fans who have different questions, different views. My main criteria is if you present them thoughtfully, I'll talk through it, even if I 1000% disagree with what you're bringing at me. If you're sharing it thoughtfully, I enjoyed this conversation. So
yeah. No, and I didn't tell you this yesterday. A listener to the podcast, or maybe a viewer because they knew what I looked like, came up to me at the game on Monday. And Kevin wasn't with me. I wish he had been. He was like, "Where's Glenn? Where's Glenn?" I'm like, Glenn doesn't live here, but I wish he did. So there are fans of yours in the wild, Glenn. People wanted to see you at the game.
There's one.
So yeah, there's at least one. No, I'm kidding. But no,
thanks again. I have to thank my brother for doing that.
Well, yeah, thank you, sir, very much for doing this. People should be checking out ATL 29. I say this all the time, but I am an every show listener. I really enjoy it, not because you're just my friends, but it's a really good conversation. It's different than this. Like I do the daily thing. It's a lot of me. But you guys are new. You guys, it's nuance. It's the play off of each other. It's really good. It's a really good list. People should be listening to that and following Glenn, because I don't want to put it too much on you, but you often deliver things in the X's and O side that I can't even comprehend until I watch what you're telling me. So thank you for that. As for everybody else, thanks for listening, everybody. As I said before I brought Glenn in, I don't know what Wednesday's is going to look like. I have to travel. The Hawks play a game that they were not supposed to play on Wednesday. So my episode, or lack thereof, may not even be there. I can promise you I'll be back by Thursday night. So stay tuned. Subscribe to the podcast. Follow Glenn. Follow ATL 29. And we'll see you all next time.